Just a quick little piece here. I wrote a larger write up on my Facebook, but when Jesse Smollett's lawyer, the second one, because the first one got fired for being involved in Michael Avenatti's Nike extortion scam, Smollett's other lawyer, after the charges were dropped, part of the basis of his alibi being that the check to the Nigerian bodybuilder brothers was for diet and exercise advice or whatever, and it had nothing to do with paying them for the attack. But after, of course, the cops had arrested these two guys, or brought them in for questioning, I should say, they confessed to the fact that they had helped plan this fake attack, and they had the receipts, and they had extra lengths of rope and some bleach. They had the ski masks. Like, they kept all their stuff like complete morons. They also found the magazine with the letters cut out from a month previous when Smollett's talent agent or something had received a threatening letter to him with crushed up aspirin that was supposed to simulate some kind of white mysterious powder. So the thing is he gets let off on these charges through some pretty obvious, celebrity-related, politician influencing, double-tiered justice system kind of shit, and which, by the way, will not stand. I'm telling you, that will not stand. There's a problem. See, the thing is that he maintains his alibi based on this check, and the check was to these brothers, and that's how he knows these brothers. But his phone records indicate that he was on the phone with them before and after the attack, even though he claimed he was on the phone with his manager during the attack, that he was in direct contact with these two immediately before and immediately after the event. So, naturally, between that fact and the receipts for the purchases for the items that were used in the supposed hate crime, as well as the store surveillance video of the two dudes buying the things that they have the receipts for, as well as the circumstantial evidence of the magazine with the cutout letters and a bottle of aspirin, etc., that was in their apartment. The problem is that Smollett claimed that they were white, and his attorney went on TV today or yesterday and said that the two Nigerian brothers were wearing white makeup underneath their ski masks. Now, we need to ask some basic critical questions here. Basic critical thinking. Who benefits from this situation? Well, Smollett obviously benefits no matter what happens. These Nigerians, I don't think they're going to benefit. The false narrative of hate crime in America will probably be, it'll probably benefit from it somehow, which is dumb because it should be the opposite, right? But I guess people are stupid. Okay, so that's the first real question to ask. So here's another question. If he paid them for services and they were friends, why would they assault him? Why would they assault him if they were friends being paid for services wearing disguises? Why would they attack him in a way that would be constituting a hate crime while wearing makeup in a deceptive fashion if he was paying them for their services? Their client needs to be a healthy, muscular dude so that he can shoot his music videos. That's why he hires them, to keep him fit. If they attack him, he becomes unfit. This makes no sense whatsoever. So let's reformat that last question. Why would they attack him wearing makeup, shouting racial and homophobic slurs at a person that they know, who is paying them for their services for his personal fitness, unless he had also paid them to pull off this attack? I mean, seriously, there's really no other outcome. There's no other possibility at this point. Logically, that's pretty much, unless there's some really significant out of the left field, completely just shatters this whole narrative evidence that they've sealed up, which, paranoids and cult members, oh, no, you just haven't seen it yet. I'll bet it's in there. Okay. There's really no way that this couldn't have happened without them planning it together. I don't believe that the police noted white makeup in the ski masks, but I suppose maybe they did. But then it's just another layer to the intrigue of the fact that these guys perpetrated a hoax hate crime. So there's a major contradiction there when he claims that the check is his alibi, that the reason that it's the check is for these guys. I know these guys. It's for services that they render for me being an actor and a musician. Okay, cool. Why would those people attack him? It couldn't have been over more money, because they wouldn't have sent a threatening letter a month before. And apparently these checks that he writes them usually are to the tune of $100 at a time, not $3,500 at a time. So you have a significant uptick in the amount of a check immediately before this whole event that I've just described. I mean, if you can't see what's going on with that, then you're definitely trying actively not to see it. That is intentional, obtuse to not see what's going on here. That dude is guilty of plotting a hate crime hoax with those other guys. And it is obvious political corruption to let a celebrity off scot-free. And to do so in a way that makes a kind of a backhanded jab at the entire situation with the Mueller report, the specific verbiage that they used on that. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to try and keep this short. I've described the contradiction. I've described in brief the things that we've been told. And yes, of course, innocent until proven guilty, but it has to get through the trial first. You don't get to drop charges because now he hasn't been proven guilty, but we don't have to assume that he's innocent either because he's not being charged. That is what the law says. There may be some double jeopardy issues when they try and get back into charging him again after they investigate. There maybe have some other kind of, what I would think is probably going to happen is some kind of a reckless endangerment, disorderly public conduct kind of thing or something, because here's what it comes down to. When it first happened, I think the expectation was that ignorant black people who listened to Democrats were going to riot. Now, the thing is that I'm not saying that that's a class of people that exist, okay? Yeah, there are definitely people that fall into that description, but from what I've seen, the Blexit thing is pretty real. They're not putting up with the bullshit. So most of the folks in Chicago kind of already knew that this was bullshit. And a lot of black people were like, man, I don't want that to be true, but did you see what they just said? That doesn't even sound real. Most people recognized that this was bullshit. And then when the police started investigating, it became obvious that it was a hoax. Then the only people that were claiming that it was real were the news, and we know how they do. So, but here's the thing. In all of these situations, it is just one wrong, drunken, stupid argument and a thrown punch away from kickstarting a massive riot. Not just in Chicago, but anywhere that it happens. Because you've got people trying to push this hate crime narrative that it's so dangerous for people of color and protected classes. Meanwhile, I honestly, as a white male, walk down the street kind of with a little leery, like, is somebody going to start some shit? Not because I'm expecting people to start shit, but because white males have been vilified for the last 2 years by people like Jussie Smollett. And unfortunately, across all colors, across all parts of the political spectrum, when a famous person spouts some ignorant bullshit on television, too many people listen and take heed and believe. And we're still looking at it. The police in Chicago, the mayor of Chicago, of course the mayor of Chicago's statement's kind of bullshit. It turns out he's out of office in 2 weeks and is not running for re-election, so he's just shouting up so that the cops don't hate his ass when he gets out and becomes a private citizen again. And it's funny because like it was Michelle Obama's chief of staff, or former chief of staff, that got the phone call into the state attorney to get the charges dropped. Rahm Emanuel was the chief of staff for Barack Obama's presidency for the first term, when John Kerry was the Secretary of State. So it's all twisted, it's all stupid, it's all corrupt, and the fact is that Jussie Smollett is going to end up being responsible for either the revolt that overthrows the corrupt two-tier justice system, or he's going to be responsible for probably what will end up being the deadliest and most violent race riot in the history of mankind. Because people are eventually going to start taking sides if something doesn't happen, or if enough people see through the bullshit, then they're all going to turn their side against that hypocritical two-tiered justice system. I will reiterate what I've said before. A two-tiered justice system A double standard, okay, is what that is. Double standards and hypocrisy negate the right to speak or rule over someone else. Now, you can say, well, anyone has the right to make their, well, you don't have a right to shit, technically, right? You exist, they exist, we all exist. And if someone comes up and kills you, you can attempt to argue with them as they're doing it, but this may not necessarily stop them. You see how that works? This is what I say when I say that laws are just air vibrating out of lungs as people speak oaths. It is iron and dye in a liquid that dries, and you draw these little squiggly symbols, right, on some mashed up, dried out tree pulp, and we agree with each other, all people, right? We are supposed to agree with each other. I don't know if she agrees. But we are supposed to agree with each other on the meanings of these symbols, and that's what language is, right? And so then we take this language and these symbols and we write them on papers and we agree to rules that we should all live by. But the problem is that the moment that someone who is in charge of enforcing the rules does not follow the rules, or that the enforcement of the rules is obviously set to two different standards for two different classes of people, there is no longer a right to rule. There is no mandate to govern at that point. And there's no consent of the governed, because the consent of the governed is based on fairness for all. Unless it's based on fear, which is totalitarianism, which last I checked, we're not supposed to be under. That's not what this is. Inverted totalitarian, maybe, but this is not a flat-out authoritarian, totalitarian country. That it would be like China. It would be locking people up. It would be killing people for dissent. So, soft totalitarian and whatever. What the fuck ever. What I'm saying is that a two-tiered or double standard justice system is not a justice system. There's no goddamn justice in that system. That's the problem. So you have Hillary Clinton committing espionage, most likely. Negligently mishandling classified information that she knew was classified at the time, despite what her perjury in front of Congress says. Just nothing but crimes. The bitch is a criminal. Yeet. Right? Jussie Smollett. It's not the only one. There's lots of other ones. As long as there are people that law enforcement has gathered enough information to indict or arrest, and someone somewhere higher up said, nah, we're not going to go after that one. My name is Jim Comey. No reasonable prosecutor would prosecute this case. Bitch, please. The reason that Jim Comey didn't want to prosecute Hillary Clinton either has to do with her being one of the most corrupt and powerful and rich pieces of shit on the planet, or that whole thing about her being the whore of Babylon and that she has magical powers that can crush people who don't like her. It could be either at this point, to be quite honest. I mean, let's be real about that. This is definitely the fucking apocalypse. So now I'm into 13 minutes. This will take forever to upload. What I'm getting at is the same old thing over and over again. Those who rule us have to follow the same rules, or they don't rule us. And those who enforce the laws have to enforce the laws equally for all of us, or they don't have a right to enforce the laws. Might does not make right. The consent of the governed makes right. Being rationally, factually correct about something and being able to demonstrate that that is for the betterment of all, that we restrict this or that we allow this, or however in any given circumstance. That is the basis of the rule of law. Not a document, not soldiers, not men with guns and badges. That's tyranny. That's force. Use of force, threats, coercion. Okay? That is not the consent of the governed. That is not the mandate to govern. That is the threat of force, fear, terrorism is what that is. As long as there are criminals going free, being let off. Meanwhile, minor criminals of the poorer income class or innocent people not being given their proper day in court, this also happens. On top of cops being judge, jury, and executioner because they fear for their lives. In all of these cases, you're either completely abdicating logic for the purposes of greed, or you're abandoning your logic because you were afraid. The two-tier justice system is not a justice system. There is no justice in that system. And if there is not a consistent and even-handed application of the law amongst all tax-paying citizens of the country, then there is no right to rule, govern, or impose law or enforce penalties or anything on anyone. Theoretically, hypothetically, technically speaking, at this moment, we live in an inverted totalitarian dystopia that has just fallen to anarchy. I'll say that again because my phone flashed. We live in an inverted totalitarian dystopia that has just succumbed to anarchy because of the double standard of the inverted totalitarian system.